Delta Force isn't one of the most daunting games out there, but it does have a lot of features that could be very helpful to know. Here are 5 of my favourite ones that I think all players should know. First up, we have the Gunsmith feature. This has been done very well and allows you to test any gun in a preview mode. You can even save the builds you make and test them in the firing range, all without owning the gun. The feature is amazing, but it does have a slight problem. When you are modifying a gun that you own, you can calibrate your weapon to give more stats on certain parts, to allow more control, for example, at the expense of ADS speed, or more ADS speed at the expense of control. Very useful. The issue with the preview mode is that it appears that you cannot calibrate the previewed weapon and save it with those calibrations. Well, actually you can. Once you have the build you think you like, you can test it in the firing range. Once in here, you can hit the tab key, click on the gun and modify the build. Here you can change the parts on the fly, but it also allows you to calibrate the previewed weapon. You can now test the newly calibrated weapon, and if you're happy, you can now save that loadout. It is important to save it from the training room like this, otherwise the build and the calibrations will be lost if you just exit. Now you can make builds for every gun in the game, ready for when you want to use them. Next up, loadouts. Loadouts are where you can save commonly used kits. You can set up and save loadouts for future use here. One great way to do this is to set up everything other than the weapon and the ammo for different levels of raids. Then you simply add a gun or guns and the ammo each time you want to do a run. Huge time saver. Another great little time saver here is the previous loadout option. If you really enjoyed using the last loadout you used, you can select this option to view it, modify it if you need to, and rebuy everything you used last time. I really love this feature myself. Be warned with this feature though, it will try and use gun parts you have in your storage. So if you're storing a Primo build, a G3 for example, and you select a different G3 build, it may rip that one in your storage apart for the parts it needs. Not the end of the world, but be aware of it. Here's a tip to save money on raids. Delta Force has a very large market system, which is not entirely player based. There are automated systems to keep the prices where the developers want them. One of these systems will very often put up sets of armor on the market at a much lower price. It doesn't put many up, so you have to catch this happening and buy a few cheap armor sets to use in your raids. This saves money and kind of makes money too if you look at it. I see this mostly with tier 4 armor, but it has happened to tier 5 too. To help, I add the armors to my favourite list so it pops up every time I open the auction house. This way you can see at a glance if there's an armor on offer. Be warned of course, you still have to store the armor, so don't go too mad. Next up we have another great money saving tip for you. If the cheap armor from the previous tip isn't available to you, then you do have another option. When choosing the armor to use in a raid, most players will go right for the brand spanking new armor. Seems sensible, right? Well, not really. You can buy armor in 3 different states: brand new, slightly worn, and damaged. While I wouldn't use the damaged version lightly, the slightly worn is only on average 10 to 15 durability less than the brand new armor, and often half the price. This is still perfect to use and will not really make a big difference in a fight. You can set this on the loadouts in tip number 2 as well to use that type of armor, although it won't work if you already have a brand new set of armor in your storage. The last tip for the video is a big one in my opinion. Delta Force has different operators that all act quite differently from each other. While our keybinds and key behaviors can work very well for them, there are times that we need something to act a little differently. Well, the game settings have your back. Under the keybinds, you'll see an option to the right to change the keybinds either globally or by operator. For example, my default key for Luna's shock arrow works well, but for Hatclaw's knife I would actually like the same key. Sadly by default it's the key for Luna's grenades. Well, in here I can change the keybind just for Hatclaw. Now my keys are the same. Another great feature is the ability to change the key action. For example, to quick throw or to hold. This is great for a character like Toxic or D-Wolf and their smokes, but I may not want it for Hatclaw's knives for example. Here I can change the behaviour just for Toxic. If you do this and you end up not liking it, you can easily reset each operator individually to the global controls here, and you can see which operators here you have actually got change controls for. Crazy useful, right? Well, that's it for this one. More coming very soon. So as a bonus tip, subscribe now so you don't miss out on more great tips for Delta Force. If you do have a second, please also hit that like button. Low effort for you, but a huge gain for me. Thank you for watching. See you next time.